So I am just keeping my eye on the participants and attendees list and making sure that we have a quorum before I call the meeting to order. And we are not quite there yet. So if people are like, does she not have a phone or a watch? I do. But just want to make sure that if we're trying to pass things quickly under the radar, that we have four. All right. Mr. Tao, before I call this meeting to order, would you be interested in leading the Pledge of Allegiance today?
Sure. I want to make sure I get it right.
I know when the pressure's on, you're like, whoa, and I've known this thing forever, but all right. So I'll turn it over to you for the pledge. We do have a quorum now. We're still missing a few people, but it is a little after 3:30. All right. See, we've got a bit more of that now. All right. So since we have a quorum and more folks are here and ready to present, I will call the St. Paul City Council to order. Roll call.
Tao.
Here.
Tolbert. Don't think he's on yet. Yang.
Here.
Jalali.
Here.
Naker. I don't think she's here yet. Prince. Here. Council President Brenmon.
Here.
5 present, 2 absent, being council members Tolbert and Naker.
Please stand and join Mr. Tao as he leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flags of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Tao.
Consent agenda items 2 through 7 are before you for your consideration.
On consent agenda, is there anything that should be taken separately? All right, it looks like everything's on consent. So Mr. Tao moves approval. Roll call.
Tao.
Aye.
Has Tolbert arrived yet?
I don't see him.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Has Councilmember Naker arrived? Doesn't look like it. Prince. Aye. Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
5 in favor, no one opposed. The consent agenda is adopted. Item number 8 is the staff report for the 2020 budget update and proposed 2021 budget presentation from emergency management.
Great. And we have Director Shute here to present on emergency management, and a reminder for people tuning in. Some of our department budget presentations are being held within the body of our council meeting just due to the lack of hours in the days to present these. So Mr. Shute was gracious enough to be willing to come and present during our council meeting. So we will get a presentation from our emergency management department. And I will say this is the department that we don't think much about until we really need them. And if there was ever a year that we really needed our emergency management department, it was this year. So we are really looking forward to hearing from you. We thank you for your work and leadership this year as well. It's been a doozy and we're not done. So thank you for that. And I will turn things over to you for your budget presentation. Welcome, Director Shute.
Thank you, Council President Brenmon and City Council members and other attendees for this opportunity to update you on my budget 2020, 2021, perhaps highlight some impacts from COVID, civil unrest, some perennial challenges that I have, and perhaps some opportunities. And I am pleased to have eclipsed my 20th month as the emergency manager for the city. And it's by no means through my leadership that we've gotten through what we've gone in the last 20 months, but the collaborative environment in our city is one that I really enjoy working in. So Holly, could you give me the next slide? You can see my department. It is a small department. I'm by far the smallest department and perhaps one of the smallest organizations within the city government. You can see I have 8 members on my team. Can you go back one, Holly? 8 members on my team. 7 of those members, including myself, are emergency managers. The 8th member is an executive assistant. And you can see highlighted in blue, 3 of us are funded by general fund dollars, the rest by grants. And we'll get into that a little bit further. And I get a little bit of quick speaking, so please feel free to interrupt me to ask me questions as we proceed. I've got about, I think, 17 or 18 slides.
Okay, and Mr. Shute, Mr. Shute, just in terms of procedure, I'll just keep an eye on questions. Because of the full screen, it's kind of hard to see what else is going on. So if you just take a breath at the end of every slide, we'll cut in with questions along the way, and otherwise, I can take care of the facilitation part so you can focus on your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So those positions, I have 3 coordinators. Our coordinators are fully trained and you know, they have their state certificate for emergency management and traditionally have, you know, plenty of experience. And then the specialists are usually the less experienced members of my team. But with such a small team, we all have to be very well cross-trained. And I like to say is small department, big impact. Because as I stated earlier in the opening slide I operate by, with, and through all of the city, the city departments. Is depending on the problem that we're facing, we try to activate and build a team that has the right capabilities to solve those problems, make decisions, take actions. And that is not resident of my department, but just the cross-trained emergency management professionals that provide the seed for that to come together within the city and get after it. Planning, you know, all of our members as they gain experience, you know, I'll steal a little bit from Eisenhower here. In an emergency, you know, plans, the actual plan is useless, but the planning is indispensable. You know, so prior to the emergencies, prior to disaster, that's when my team makes its money on reviewing and updating a plan, and then getting the stakeholders that are involved in that plan to get to work on that plan. So when we do face something that is either in that plan or similar to that plan, we are better off for the coordination that we've done preceding the event. Another key core component of building that preparedness that I focus on is training and exercise, which has been very challenged this year. But you know, once we have those plans and we've conducted that coordination, really put those into practice to see what functions well, what perhaps needs some additional training or resources to show up. But that is a core component of building preparedness across the city. In grants administration, as you'll see later in my brief, and as I indicated on my org chart, the majority of my emergency managers are funded by grants, and the majority of the capability that I'm able to create in the city is funded by grants. So doing this well, having an experienced grants administration component on my team, and staying solvent there is critical to building preparedness throughout the city and funding my department. And as I stated, I do have a member on my team that is executive assistant, but also bringing that assistant in an emergency management capacity at times is also critical. Bring me the next slide, Holly. A simple restated mission of mine is to save lives and property through whole of community resilience and preparedness. And, you know, achieve that again through plan, prepare, respond, recover, and mitigate cycle. And, that is not my department alone. As I mentioned, it's my department plus the other city departments, but it's beyond that. It's the council members cooperating for your ability to influence. It's my partners in the county in public safety and their emergency management department and other civil service, as well as the state. And recently, more has come to light, the Minnesota National Guard. But that whole of community bringing to bear on the problem to create and sustain that resilience and achieve that the purpose. Next. As we talked in the beginning, in 20 months, I've seen half of these example emergencies, disasters. But as I stated, I'm responsible. The department is for coordinating the city's preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation from these incidents and disasters. And if we look at our emergency operations plan, I am never the sole. Next previous slide, please. That speak to these risks and speaks to the response to these risks. I'm generally never the sole incident manager. At least I'm a co-manager, so that I can tap into the subject matter expertise of the department that has the material, that has the worker power to bring the technical expertise to bear on those problems. Next. If you look at my general fund, as compared to the rest of the city budget, I'm a very small sliver of the general fund, 0.1%, and that's been the timing on these holidays, but that's been a perennial 0.1%. As I look back on previous city budgets, and that poses its own challenges. Can you go back one, Holly? And so that poses some challenges that I'll speak to in a little bit here. And when you look in this, it says 2021, but 2020, 2019, this is generally the same pie slice. To operate my department, less than a quarter of it is funded by the general fund, that portion of the general fund that I receive, and the others are funded by special. Those are grants. And I'll speak a little bit more about those in subsequent slides. So out of that general fund, the large portion of my dollars go to funding the salaries of those three members: myself, emergency management coordinator, and the executive assistant. And those general funds are key also because I need those general fund dollars to match the federal grants that often have, all of them that we are currently utilizing, have a dollar match that is a general fund salary amount to tap into to that grant. But those services, that 9%, is largely comprised of the outdoor warning sirens that we operate and maintain, 36 of them throughout the city, antiquated technology, finicky technology, and expensive to maintain. As well as some other interoperable communications equipment. And then the materials and supplies are really to keep the EOC functioning when we have to activate it. So you can see as we face 2020 and the mayor asked me to come up with ways to help solve citywide budget gaps, very difficult for me to achieve that without getting into the salaries of members on my team. If we look across the top line there, the general fund, in 2019, it was up for just over $460,000. In 2020, I received a couple bumps. One of those was to fund some additional siren costs. That is the tower that is the radio tower that's top of the point in downtown. To be able to make sure we have coverage for those outdoor warning sirens throughout the city to the tune of $12,500. And also as part of the mayor's Community First Public Safety Initiative, I was provided $100,000 to partner with the Downtown Improvement District to really partner and get the Fusion Center or the Joint Safety and Communication Center established in the Skyway with a public-private partnership to get that Fusion Center to create better communication and safety and security in the downtown area. And then in 2020, you can see the reduction portion of the budget gap that I had to provide to the city budget in order to help make up for the budget gap that COVID induced on us. You can see in 2021, my budget goes back down, and I no longer have we've executed $1,000 for the public safety initiative, the community first public safety initiative, and I'm stabilized at the return amount of just over $460,000 with a little bit of increase for inflation. And this equals to no identified additions or reductions. As part of the team, we're looking at how do I help the 21 budget gap. As indicated, it's very difficult for me to come up with a solution, an acceptable solution for the mayor that didn't involve people. Next. So as I said, I'm largely funded by grants. Over 76% of my annual budget is grant funded, and a large portion of that is the UASI grant. That is the Urban Area Security Initiative grant. You can see perennially, and I'll show you a slide with some risk identification a little bit later here, but in 2018 and 19, the city was awarded $900,000 for the UASI grant. Now we are a sub-awardee to the Urban Area Security Initiative. It's called the Twin Cities UASI, and that's 10 jurisdictions across the Twin Cities that are supported by this UASI grant, with Minneapolis and St. Paul being awarded along with Ramsey County and Hennepin County, the large majority of that UASI grant. And it is a grant that the execution period is 18 months. So you can see why I'm counting that as 2020 usage. Over in the far right column, you can see portions of that grant that I executed 2020. The deadline for the 18 UASI grant was extended through the end of this year to COVID. Now, speaking about that UASI grant, you can see in my notes towards the bottom there, it is a terrorism nexus. It was born out of 9/11. And the requirements on that grant, I have to maintain grant usage and execution that focuses 25% on law enforcement terrorism prevention. Less than or 50% can be utilized for salary. And new this year in the awarding, 5% needed to be focused on cybersecurity, 5% on soft targets, and 5% emerging threats. I highlight this because the language on this grant changes, and right now we are using all of, and if not more, of the 50% of the salary portion in the emergency management department to fund functions of my department. So there's already inherent risk in it. And being a sub-grantee, it's a formulaic based for the Twin Cities Initiative. And the Department of Public Safety at the state level really drives that formula, interprets the language from Department of Homeland Security and FEMA, but also shapes that language. And the next awarding of that, I'm actually taking a 13% reduction based on the Department of Public Safety's change of that formula. So there's risk in relying on it as we continue to, respond and continue to go year in, year out with my department. And then EMPG, a smaller grant, but that doesn't have the restrictions on it. Emergency Management Performance Grant, and that does not have to have a terrorism nexus, but allows me to sustain my program and other activities. All right, looking at this slide here, you can see time years across the bottom, and that orange line on the top line is the St. Paul UASI share of that 10 jurisdiction Twin Cities Urban Area Security Initiative grant. The bottom yellow line is what St. Paul has utilized at that 50% line or utilized for personnel within the Emergency Management Department. And you can see in the last few years, since 2017, we've entered a period of risk where our dollars dollars that we're utilizing out of this grant for personnel to fund the department have actually exceeded a 50% salary mark that in line. Now, each year I do this, I have to seek a waiver from the state, and the other jurisdictions being below that line, it's able to mitigate that. But I just want to highlight that risk to the council, and I look for ways to highlight the risk to the mayor's office as well, in a continual effort to get out grant dependency and to shift my budget onto the general fund, at least the salary grant, the grant dollars we're using for salary. Not a popular year to continue that conversation, not a popular year to gain traction, but it's something that I have to be mindful of. And whenever I have an opportunity to show decision makers and policymakers, when I come to ask for this, whatever we can do to support it, to continue to fund our program would be beneficial. All right, looking at this 2020 year, the COVID response and the civil unrest impacts, the emergency operations plans that as I stated, are useless when we're actually fighting or responding, but they're critical for preparing the whole of community, the whole of government preparedness. My ability to get after those the way I normally do on a methodical approach, engaging all of my interdepartment partners, that's been a struggle this year in 2020. So looking for creative ways to get after that as COVID continues and as we move into 21. Functional exercises and training, in-person training, which is the most valuable, from the federal down to the state, down throughout the local area, local training sponsored by the local jurisdictions. That has all been basically put on hold due to social distancing requirements and CDC guidelines. It's not a program that has been executed at all in 2020. The next goal is engagement and outreach, as well as public preparedness and resiliency education. I look for every opportunity to join parks and the police department, join the fire department throughout the warm months to get that outreach, to encourage folks to make a plan, build a kit, and increase our community resiliency. But of course, social distancing and COVID has brought that to a halt this year as well and limited me to social media engagement. EMAP, the Emergency Management Accreditation Program, our city is proud to be one of just a handful. You can count them on one hand that have achieved that accreditation across over 100 performance measures. And like the emergency operations plans and the other plans that sustain our city and prepare it, it's been difficult to diligently maintain the necessary things that we have to update for preparation for that reaccreditation. And then EOC renovation, COVID has obviously turned on its head what we can expect to, achieve social distancing while in a room. Intense problems usually involve, planners and decision makers to come together in a tight quarters. And some of the council members joined us during civil unrest, and that's not sustainable in a pandemic. I had some renovations planned, and I've had to adapt those plans and shift my focus on how to engage two floors, the 6th floor and the 5th floor here at the EOC to achieve that. Next. Then I'll wrap it up here. I think, we have been activated in some form or fashion, the Emergency Operations Center, for over 220 days since March 16th. So I'm proud of the team on how we've been able to adapt to a virtual environment and to still provide situation awareness, understanding, and then drive decision where necessary across the city. Continuity of operation plans were critical on the initial phase, and we helped coordinate the execution of that. And we proved that EOC can quickly become a law enforcement command post, and as we support law enforcement during the most intense periods of civil unrest to respond to that. We've bolstered the city's unsheltered response with an incident command structure and decision-making process that has helped speed decision and speed meeting unmet needs out in the field. I appreciate the council members out there with contribution to the fruit of that labor. Our grant expertise has aided the police department and the city in writing and getting awarded a $750,000 grant that is supporting, I know it's OJP Justice Program, but it does support the citywide, especially amid COVID. We've kept good documentation and worked with the city to recently submit over $1 million in COVID allowable expenses and seeking public assistance from FEMA, and we're expecting a speedy pay of that. And we've assisted OFS in establishing a Sound CARES Act Relief Fund review and funding framework that should survive not only execution, but the likely audit of that when time comes. We're continuing to be the go-to for logistical support for COVID-19 response to ensure that we're utilizing resources on hand before something new, and continuing to support city response on sheltered homeless with whatever needed, and then beginning to focus on that vaccination plan with Ramsey County, City of St. Paul, Ramsey County Public Health. Next. So that's my budget 2021, my challenges and my opportunities. And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Thank you, Director Shute. Very much appreciated. And the message received on the grant reliance, I mean, 75% of a budget on grant feels tenuous. So I appreciate your calling that out. And then also, I remember thinking in the height of the civil uprising that it was necessary for people to be together, to work together, but it was also necessary for people to not be together. And really appreciated your work there to try to navigate that, and also recognize that the EOC is certainly not set up for any sort of social distancing whatsoever. And that as we designed that, I'm sure that wasn't one of our top concerns, but I appreciate your refreshing my thoughts about that and acknowledging that we simply have to make some changes in order to anticipate, what the future will bring for us. So I appreciate that. I see Mr. Tolbert has a hand up, so I will turn it to Mr. Tolbert.
Yeah, Director Shute, thank you for coming before the council today. I don't really have a question, more of a statement. I just want to commend you and your team and your leadership publicly over the last 9 months. You really stepped up to the plate and have demonstrated fantastic leadership, and our city is in a better, safer position as a result of the pandemic, and then also during the civil unrest because of you. And I know there was a lot of other people too, but you are in charge of this department, and you deserve credit publicly for that. I think emergency management, we knew it was important, and I think we fund it every year, and we've had this. I don't think we fully appreciated it until this year. I know I didn't appreciate it to the level that needed to be appreciated until this year. It's it's one of those things, in case something happens, and something did happen, and you were ready, and you reacted well, and you organized the city, and you kept us on task, and you kept us focused, along with many other people. But I just want to say thank you to you and your entire team. I'm glad that we have invested in emergency management, and will continue to invest in emergency management and invest in trainings and planning. This past 9 months has shown exactly why we do that. So thank you very much for the last 9 months, and I know you'll continue doing that into the future.
Thanks, Councilmember Tolbert.
I see Ms. Prince.
Similarly, Mr. Shute, I want to thank you for your leadership. I second everything that Councilmember Tolbert just said. I recall in January, we were going to be voting on your emergency management plan for the year, and it was on our consent agenda, and I thought, we should really learn more about that. And it reminded me of when I was traveling when my son was about 4, and they gave the emergency, that look at the card with all the slides and the water life preservers and so forth. And we were just about to land, and Sam pulled the sheet out of the back of the seat and said, when do we get to use this stuff? So this year we got to use this stuff, and it was really amazing to see how it all worked. So thank you, and for your continued leadership as we continue to deal with all of this. I do have one question in terms of the emergency management plan, and I think I've heard Deputy Mayor Tincher refer to this, but you know, part of the emergency management plan is that we're preparing for a natural disaster, or if there were a massive fire, or whatever it would be that might make a lot of our community homeless. And I know that we have plans for that, and I recognize that to some extent we're talking about short-term homelessness. But I'm just wondering, with our unsheltered problem this year, are there any resources that we could be getting for the growth in our unsheltered homeless population, which clearly is related, the rapid growth of it to COVID and the economic crisis that it has brought on our city? So I just wondered if that was something that we can find any help with. Just as if, you know, they were all residents of the city that were suddenly homeless from a natural disaster.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for the remarks, Councilmember Prince. Our emergency operation plan does include emergency support function 6, which is mass sheltering. And as you indicated, it is built for a natural disaster, one that is not as penetrating and pervasive as COVID perhaps. Typically a smaller amount of a population in a smaller geographical area, and those needs can be met with you know, a localized effort. The unsheltered and those experiencing homeless in St. Paul is across the city, as you know, and we are earnestly seeking aid and assistance. As you know, I know you're familiar with what the mayor is planning to do with the CARES dollars that we're spending thus far. And a great portion of it was dedicated to supporting the unsheltered homeless. Just today, we aided the finalization of a letter from the county that was jointly written with the city and speaks of county and city partnership, which has been strong in serving this population up to the state of Minnesota, asking a very similar question that you proposed, is what can the state do to help us? Because our emergency support function 6 plan, you know, it identifies our primary locations where we can set up sheltering, and it, you know, would call on the Red Cross, it would call on the Salvation Army to the inside and the wraparound services, along with our city departments, to serve those in need in that. However, we're finding that just space and dollars, you know, doesn't exactly equal the service that we need to get at the unmet need for unsheltered population, especially as we you know, experienced this cold snap this past week, and as we're staring down winter coming here pretty quick. So we are, as a you know, a work group body within the city, led by the deputy mayor, just pouring everything we have into finding exactly that solution.
And I know you have done that, and I'm really grateful for it. I had texted Deputy Mayor Tincher one weekend about a new encampment on the east side, and within a couple of hours, you and the deputy mayor were on scene, and I just can't thank you enough for the great service that you've provided and your team and your coordination of all of these issues.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. Are there other council members who have comments before we move on with the remainder of our meeting agenda? Director Shute, it looks like we have asked our questions. We may have follow-up later. We don't vote on a final budget until December, so we have work to do. but we do appreciate the presentation that you've put together for us to help us understand more about your work, especially in this year. And I just, on a personal note, would say that I don't know how it is that we managed to hire the guy who requires the smallest amount of sleep in the entire human race. Like, you are run on fumes and can catch 40 winks like in a chair and under a desk, and it really impressed me in our crisis. I don't think that's in the job description, but perhaps it should be. But thank you so much for your work above and beyond this year, and again, for your budget presentation here today. We appreciate it, and we will finalize the budget in about a month and a half now. So thank you so very much to you and your team.
Thank you, Council President, Council members.
Thank you.
Item number 9, ABCA 20-6, considering the appeal of Michael Bulow to a decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals denying 2 variance requests for lot coverage and rear yard setback at 1493 Highland Parkway. Public hearing was closed on October 21st.
All right, and so we had a staff report, and this item was laid over. Mr. Tolbert.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I appreciate my colleagues permitting last week the extra week. I wanted to take the time to read all the materials that came in right before the hearing last week and really try and comb through them and focus on the crux of the issues in the case. I also want to extend my appreciation to the number of people who sent thoughtful notes weighing in on this, as well as the staff who answered the many questions that they received on this matter, both on substance and on procedure and many other issues. This case is a tough choice because the chronological facts cloud the issue at hand. And over the last week, I've been able to really think about it and focusing just on the facts that are relevant to the decision and the facts and factors that we should consider under the law in our quasi-judicial capacity. When focusing just on the actual facts of the variance application, I believe that based on all the facts, I believe the case for a variance has been proven and met in this instance. I'm going to be making a motion to grant the appeal with the findings of error in the BZA's decisions and the basis of the decision to grant the variance on the reasoning in the BZA staff report dated September 9th, 2020 to support this decision. I do also want to talk about 2 other issues that are not part of my decision, but I just want to bring them up because they were mentioned many times in the comments and kind of just the issues that clouded the facts. Like I said, these are not a part of the reasoning for the decision, but I do want to just bring them up. One, the improper way that the builder went about this. Mr. Bulow did make some critical building decisions without consulting DSI staff. In my opinion, Mr. Bulow knows better, and I would expect better from him as someone who knows the process and has been involved in building before. And I also greatly understand why the neighbors are and would be upset about this, as I am too. And I just want to say, we expect better and we've seen better from Mr. Bulow, and I'm taking this as an honest mistake and not from malicious intent. But from here on out, I think every I and every T needs to be crossed and dotted. Second, I think one of the things that's unfortunately missed in this entire conversation and something that I just want to note and recognize here is the interesting feature of this house. It's a universal design house. That's what's being built here, a brand new universal design house. And I think it's something that I hope we have more of in our community because it is an opportunity for people to be able to age in place, especially people that have handicap limitations or mobility limitations. And it's something that is unique and it will help keep people in our city for the remainder of their life. And I think that's something that should just be noted here. It is something very cool that I haven't seen. We've had a fair amount of teardowns in Ward 3. I haven't seen many universal designs like this, and I think that's something very unique. And I know it's unique because of circumstances of the builder and the family. Like I said, those 2 issues are not a part of my decision. They are obviously a part of the facts of everything that happened, and much of that has been addressed in the public comments. And I just wanted to at least point those out that those were not missed on me. But like I said, going back to the actual facts that we must consider in our quasi-judicial capacity regarding the variance and the findings of fact, I'm going to make the motion to grant the appeal, finding error in the BZA's decision, and base the decision to grant the variance on the reasoning in the BZA staff report dated September 9th, 2020 in support of this decision. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tolbert, and I will support your motion. And I want to underscore also a couple of your comments outside of the BZA decision. One is that we always run into challenges when design is sort of above and beyond, as opposed to trying to, I mean, our rules are kind of designed to prevent folks from going below a standard. And we had similar kind of challenges and obstacles when we had a, now the name, but a high energy efficiency home with some state of the art features, and the DSI code just didn't even speak to them. So as we navigate these changes where folks are looking to build different kinds of homes to age in place or what have you, think that those are challenges we're going to face. This is perhaps a little bit separate from the BZA thing. And then also just looking at the record, I just want to remind folks that these are residential neighborhoods, and we should always, I really want to encourage people to be tough on the issues and easy on the people, because folks are going to work through their project and ultimately be neighbors. And it's important to just stay focused on the issue and be kind to one another. It's been a stressful year, and I find that sometimes these things that get contentious in neighborhoods can have carryover effects, and I worry about that. So, but I would support your motion. Any other thoughts from colleagues? All right, seeing none, a motion by Mr. Tolbert, roll call.
Tao. You're on mute, Councilmember.
Thank you. Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The motion of intent, the appeal is granted. Item number 10, Resolution 20-1437, approving adverse action against the massage practitioner application submitted by Cao Vang for the premises located at 2140 Ford Parkway. And this was laid over from October 21st.
And it is my understanding that there's a request by the sponsor for another additional 1 week layover. So moved by Mr. Tolbert. Roll call.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is laid over to November 4th. Item number 11, Resolution Public Hearing 20-226, authorizing the Police Department to accept the amendment to the grant agreement with the U.S. Office of National Drug Control Policy for the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas Program and amending the 2020 grant budget. And this was also laid over and public hearing closed from October 21st.
All right, and Councilmember Yang laid this item over for 1 week to gather more information. Ms. Yang, do you move approval or do you have remaining questions?
Thank you. I don't have any more questions. I do move for approval.
Okay, Ms. Yang moves approval. Roll call.
Tao. Oh.
Aye.
Council President, there's a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Tolbert.
Yeah, was there any additional, I didn't notice any additional information attached regarding this grant. I guess I was under the assumption that we were going to get additional information as attached to it, because I agreed with Councilmember Yang that it was short on details of what this was about.
I will look to Ms. Yang, but my understanding was that it is not a grant, it's an amendment to a grant, and there's an additional $15,000 for materials that's been added.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Yang, did you know more than that?
Thank you for that question, Councilmember Tolbert. Yeah, you're right. There are no additional attachments included here from last week. I basically just had my legislative aide reach out to one of the officers whose names was in the grant attachment here, and so we connected with them about what the grant money would be used for.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think that anyone is on here who would be able to confirm if they can add on those attachments.
Okay, that Council President Brandmont's explanation is helpful, and your explanation are both helpful to me, so I'm okay. Thank you. I appreciate that though, and for asking the question that last week.
Definitely, I think that I appreciated the opportunity to sort that out as well. So Ms. Yang would move approval. Roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Baker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Council President Brandmont.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 12 is second reading of ordinance 20-32, amending section 220.05 of the Legislative Code to set rates for base level garbage service to be effective January 1st, 2021, and changing the rate calculation from a rate that includes taxes to a rate that excludes taxes. This ordinance is laid over to November 4th for third reading public hearing. Item number 13, second reading of ordinance 20-33, creating the classification titled Deputy Director of Human Resources in the unclassified service pursuant to section 12.03.2H of the City Charter. This ordinance is laid over to November 4th for third reading public hearing. This would be when we are going to recess the City Council, but Councilmember Tolbert has his hand raised.
I think it's just still raised from.
No.
Okay. All right. So at this point, the same.
Can I?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I did have my hand raised. This was supposed to be a little bit further back, but I see the right people online. As we're seeing more and more of these grants come through, that we held up number 11, for example, not this specifically. Police seems to have the most of them, but if we can just ask OFS and others when they put them on the agenda to have a little more information about what they're going to be used for and things like that, rather than just the finance numbers, I think that would be really helpful. Even a brief staff report like they have at the HRA or that we have at the HRA would be very helpful, so we know fully what we're getting into. And some of these, the contracts aren't there. So a brief staff report, I think, would be fine. And I'm passing this on to, it looks like Mr. McCarthy is on, and I know Holly's on, but let the departments know that we've requested that, or at least I have.
And Mr. Tolbert, I think that absolutely, I think anytime there's a request to amend something or at a grant, that we should see an attachment. But in addition to that, I recognize that there's challenges with online meetings. I think in City Hall, it's easy for an author of any or a staff member on any particular legislation to sit in council chambers, and if something comes up, they're available. But that takes a little bit more intention here with our online meetings. And I really, I agree and underscore your point. It's no additional effort on our part to add staff members to our meeting as attendees. And if questions come up, they can answer the questions. If they don't, they get a pass that night, just like if we're in council chambers. So I think that the expectation is there. For example, item number 11 could have simply gone through last week if someone was able to answer the question. So I'm not picking on any particular department or anyone in particular, but I fully agree that that extra additional effort is necessary with online meetings. So thank you for that, for making that additional comment. Okay, so we're going to do some of our budget gymnastics here, and the St. Paul City Council will be in recess.
The meeting is adjourned.
The St. Paul City Council is back in order. Roll call.
Tao.
Aye. Here.
Tolbert.
Here.
Yang.
Here.
Jalali,
Here.
Naker,
Here.
Prince,
Here.
Council President Brenmoen.
Here.
7 present, no one absent. Item 14, Resolution Public Hearing 20-232, amending the spending and financing plans for the St. Paul River Center Convention and Visitors Authority.
And are there representatives from the River Center Convention and Visitors Authority here, or will this be part of the report from Ms. Earl?
Council President Brenmoen, council members, this will be part of the report from Ms. Earl, and she's prepared to give a quick staff briefing on the next 2 items.
Okay, great. So we will hear a staff report on items number 14 and 15, and then go back and take those items separately and then move on to item 16. Welcome, Ms. Earl.
Great. Thank you, Council President Brenmoen and council members. I will share my screen. I've got a brief overview of the resolution. It's a pretty long set of actions in front of you, including what was just adopted by the library board as well. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So thanks for having me here today. I'll briefly kind of summarize what's happening with our 2020 budget. And this is the large mid-year solution that we need to bring forward to address some both financing and spending pressures that we have in the city this year. So the first, we've discussed some of these in budget meetings prior to today, but just wanted to highlight some of the areas where we're seeing significant revenue variances in 2020. This list looks very similar to, I know, a list you've seen relative to 2021, but this is for the current year, looking at where we're seeing revenue reductions and revenue losses due to COVID and due to the economic impacts of the pandemic and that they've had on the city this year. I won't read all of these, and this isn't a full list of every revenue that's adjusted in the resolution, but just to give you a sense that it's a pretty broad impact that the pandemic is having, and that on the revenue side, the revenue losses we're seeing across many of our major general fund revenues. And I'll make one quick note just for folks who maybe haven't heard me talk about the revenue losses overall before. The property taxes, this is recognizing an additional delinquency rate. So assuming that there's a lower payment rate and that folks won't be able to make all their payments for property taxes this year, not a change in the levy. So just want to make sure that that's clear. We're also experiencing cost pressures in 2020. And so we've got on the spending side, there was a cost to respond to the civil unrest that happened earlier this year. These were unanticipated costs for many of our city departments, primarily the police department, but several departments responded to the civil unrest and the needs of our community during that time. And so this represents the costs that were unbudgeted for that response. As the River Center, you mentioned that there's a River Center resolution as well. We set aside up to $1.9 million for convention center operating support. And then we've also set aside $1 million of contingency for additional COVID costs that could arise through year end. This can also potentially be used, FEMA matches. FEMA covers 75%. They don't cover all costs. And so there could also be grant opportunities and costs for reimbursement that aren't fully funded. And so we want to make sure that we're planning, knowing that if anything, if 2020 has showed us anything, we don't really know what to expect and want to make sure that we are in a good position through year end, depending on what might come up, particularly related to the pandemic. This summarizes the solution. Oh, I'm sorry, the last slide also. So we had about over $22 million to solve between the revenue losses that we are projecting this year and continuing to monitor, and then the new spending pressures that we're seeing this year for both civil unrest and COVID response. And so this chart, this slide summarizes the solutions that have been included in the resolution. Again, I won't read through all of them, but this summarizes the many hundreds of lines in the resolution that's before you and lays out a variety of solutions, including one-time revenues, shifting funds to CARES shifting eligible expenses to the CARES resource, and then also general fund department solutions, and lists out the various dollar amounts for departments that have reduced their spending largely through vacancy savings, but other solutions that they've brought forward this year. And then there are two relatively small reinvestments, funding for EAB response and also additional funds for library materials. And then just an overall quick update on our 2020 budget management. We have a continuing in place a non-salary spending waiver process. So spending over a certain dollar amount comes through OFS for review before spending can be approved, in order to make sure that we're using our dollars wisely and that we're keeping track of all the dollars we're spending this year. We've got a hiring freeze and a hiring waiver process. That's a robust review of all hiring through 2020. We don't have any planned use of emergency reserves in the 2020 solution plan, and we're continuing to seek grant funding to offset the COVID costs that are unanticipated in the 2020 budget. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions folks have on the three actions that, the one that the library board already took and the two before you right now for City Council.
Thank you, Ms. Earl. Are there questions on this presentation that is covering items 14 and items 15? Items 14 and 15. It looks like there are not questions. So thank you very much, Ms. Earl.
Thank you.
All right, so Ms. Moore, we're gonna take item 14 then read separately. Ms. Moore, are you gonna read item number 14 then?
I did read it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Council President.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, so we're looking at, could I just have you read item number 14 again, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Resolution Public Hearing 20-232, amending the spending and financing plans for the St. Paul River Center Convention and Visitors Authority.
All right, thank you. So are there comments or questions on this item? This is a public hearing, and we have had the ability for folks to participate by phone or online. But before we close the public hearing, are there any other comments from my colleagues? All right, seeing none, Ms. Naker moves to close the public hearing and approve. Roll call.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Council President Brenmon.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 15, Resolution Public Hearing 20-233, amending the spending and financing plans for various city departments.
All right, and this has been a public hearing that we've taken comments online and by the phone. Are there any other thoughts before we close the public hearing? Ms. Naker.
Thank you, Council President. This is just one of those, this huge item. Don't want it to go without saying that kudos to our Office of Financial Services and really all of our departments and staff in the middle of an incredibly difficult year. Finding a $20+ million budget solution that we weren't expecting to have to find and making the sacrifices we needed to make is remarkable. And we talked about this a little bit earlier today, but I think the strong financial position our city is in that ends up making it easier for us to effectively raise money, to bond, to use public dollars efficiently and wisely. It's all due to that kind of hard work and prudence. So kudos.
I appreciate that. It's always, these very important decisions end up being kind of part of a lot of other things that are happening in the world right now. So I definitely appreciate that, and just recognizing the tightening of the belts that needed to happen, and really the sacrifices that were made. We didn't have an open swimming pool for folks to play in. We kept fountains off, and there were positions held open, and lots of loss really this year. And folks, I think, really recognized that we needed to pull together to get through it. And so here we are with this adjusted budget where we're not rating next year in order to try to make ends meet this year. So I appreciate taking time to acknowledge that as well. And also just to my colleagues and to anyone watching that this is typically we do a budget adjustment in December at the end of fourth quarter when we know what our sales tax revenue is. We know what our hotel sales tax looks like when we are more sure about all of the final numbers on our budget. So this is the first of two. This year we'll have this budget adjustment, which really ties up loose ends for 2020. And today is sort of the deadline for that. And then at the end of the year, we'll make those adjustments for sales tax and other changes in revenue that come in. So expect to hear a similar report about those other financial details in December. So again, this has been a public hearing. Folks have been able to participate by contributing comments online or by phone. So Ms. Naker would move to close the public hearing and approve. Roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item number 16, resolution public hearing 20-237, amending the spending plans for various city departments in the general fund.
And Ms. Houston, do you have a quick report on this one?
Council President Brenmoen, council members, I hope you can hear me okay. My microphone isn't working. Okay. So this item, the city council has also taken a look at their budget operations and found city council operations savings in their budget for 2020 that will help fill some gaps within the 2020 budget. And so this resolution takes some savings within the city council budget and repurposes or invests those funds into the fire department for a community or a health and wellness coordinator position for 2 years, and also creates dedicated funding for the Ethos program within the city attorney's office. And this is for a contract with Rapid Response. And so that's what's before you today.
All right, thank you, Ms. Houston. Are there questions for Ms. Houston? All right, and this has been a public hearing where people have been able to make comments online or by phone. So there's no further discussion. Ms. Jalali would move to close the public hearing and approve. Roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang, Councilmember Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted.
Council President, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Naker.
I know
Ms.
we
Naker.
moved on from that. I got the sense that maybe there was 1 or 2 folks who wanted to comment on that last item. I thought Ms. Jalali maybe looked like she wanted to, but I might have misread that. So I just wanted to call your attention to that in case anybody had wanted to say something.
Okay, I thought I asked for comments and didn't see hands. So if I missed something, by all means.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just say a few words that I just wanted to play back for transparency that a lot of community partners have reached out to us about the chance to be funded for different violence prevention and outreach initiatives that they're doing this year. And for a really combined series of circumstances ranging from the pandemic to capacity to bureaucracy to everything, there was a strong aspiration from many on this council to be able to fund work like that. And I just don't think that we got there this time given the vote that we just took. But I do think it's important to show that we're listening to that. And there's really good work happening across the community that money like our COP funds could fund with a support of this council and with just working more closely with community partners. And I guess I'd like to lift up that I received a lot of feedback about that and continue to even up into this vote. And it sounds like resources that we weren't able to spend in that way are still going to support important community first public safety efforts like the Ethos program and the Fire Health and Wellness Coordinator, which is non-police EMTs and community responders. But I'm simply expressing for the record, I would like us to keep advancing that conversation. I know from speaking with many folks, others want to, and that we do have the chance to try again. But we hear all the time people doing this work in community with very little resource to reach folks and prevent violence. So I guess if other colleagues want to speak to that as well, I think it would be helpful for our community here. But I did want to make sure that I got to say something, given that it's just a complex situation with many factors that I hope to keep making progress on. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Jalali. And Ms. Houston, I think one of the comments that I didn't make was just, again, thinking these are dollars primarily that were saved by council salary reductions and other cost savings from within the council. And so in particular, I'm looking at Mr. Tolbert, who has really he hasn't had a legislative aid the majority of this year. So in an effort to try to reduce cost savings. So this is one part of it is money that wasn't able to get out the door for COP, and another larger portion council savings, in which I want to acknowledge and recognize the tightening of the belts and the sacrifices that have been made this year to try to balance this budget. Okay, Ms. Prince.
Yeah, I would say, I think it's regrettable as well that we weren't able to get the COP money out and to do an RFP in a timely way so that groups that are doing this work in the community could apply for that money. It's my understanding that we will have that money. As where we stand right now is that those COP funds will be in our 2021 budget. And I don't see any reason why we couldn't start out right at the beginning of the year to do an RFP to give everybody who is doing this important violence intervention and violence prevention work in the neighborhood to have an opportunity to apply for those funds. And I'm very supportive of that.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Prince. Other comments? All right. So we are on to item 17.
For the following items, no objections to the legislative hearing officer's recommendations were received, and therefore she recommends adoption. Item 17, RLHTA 20-622, 309 Aurora Avenue. Item 18, RLHTA 20-625, 309 Aurora Avenue. Item 22, RLHTA 20-629, 2041, 2045 Rainy Avenue. Item 23, RLHTA 20-597, 1908 Roblin Avenue. And item 25, RLH FCO 20-140, 1108 Western Avenue North. And again, the motion is to adopt these items.
All right, so Ms. Jalali would move to close the public hearing and adopt. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, a roll call.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang.
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker.
Aye.
Prince.
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted. For the following items, no objection to the legislative hearing officer's amended recommendations were received, and therefore she recommends amendment and adoptions of item 19, RLH RR 20-37, 1282 Hague Avenue. Item 20, RLH RR 20-47, 975 Marshall Avenue. And item 21, RLH RR 20-34, 1355 Payne Avenue. And again, the motion is to amend and adopt.
All right, so Ms. Yang would move to amend or close the public hearing and with amendments and adopt. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tao.
Aye.
Tolbert.
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali.
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the resolutions are adopted as amended. For the following item, the legislative hearing officer's recommendation is to continue the public hearing to November 4th. Item 24, RLH RR 20-39, 2022 Stillwater Avenue. And again, the motion is to continue the public hearing to November 4th.
All right, so Ms. Prince would move to continue the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is continued to November 4th.
All right,
Yeah.
and that, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say type suspension item.
Yep. So we have a suspension item. Ms. Naker moves suspension of the rules. Roll
Tao,
call.
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang, you're on mute, Councilmember Yang. Perhaps we lost her. Okay. Jalali.
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The rules are suspended. Resolution 20-1545, encouraging all eligible St. Paul citizens to vote in the November 3rd, 2020 election and all elections, and reaffirming support for the promotion of legislative efforts nationwide that enable, rather than suppress, voter participation in elections.
Ms. Naker.
Thank you, Council President. Thanks so much to my colleagues for being willing to suspend the rules for this late addition to our agenda. I wanted to introduce this resolution. Clearly, we have a very big day coming up next Tuesday, November 3rd. It's election day, and it's not just big because of who wins the election, but it's big because it's a chance to reaffirm the legitimacy of our electoral process. And that's probably more true this year than it's ever been before. And I've been thinking about how all of us are only in the positions that we're in. We only have the authority we have because our whole society has an electoral process that we respect, that has legitimacy. And I think we have a duty to make sure that the process is fair and that everyone who is eligible to vote can do so, and that our electoral system isn't called into question when it's working the way it's intended. As an example, we may not know the results of the election on November 3rd or even for days afterward. And that's not a bug in the system, that's a feature. That's making sure that all of the votes are counted and that all of the votes are legitimate. So I want to just assure our voters and the public that the city, the county, the state, and all those responsible for assuring the legitimacy of this process are working towards that end, and that you should vote and have confidence that your vote will be counted and your vote will be sacred. And so I just wanted to read a couple of the whereases in this resolution. Whereas the right to vote in free and fair elections is a cornerstone of our democracy, and whereas every eligible citizen should be able to vote, every vote should be counted, and all election results should be respected, and whereas no voter should be subject to intimidation of any kind and no ballot should be illegitimately disqualified, and whereas unfounded claims of widespread voter fraud undermine public confidence in the electoral process and justify pernicious laws that create needless and discriminatory obstacles to voter participation, and whereas the will of voters should be respected by all citizens, and especially those who take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of St. Paul encourages all eligible citizens to exercise their right to vote in the upcoming and all subsequent elections, and reaffirms its support for the promotion of legislative efforts nationwide that encourage and enable, rather than suppress, voter participation in elections.
Thank you, Ms. Naker. Is there discussion on that motion? I see Ms. Jalali and Ms. Prince have a hand up.
Thank you. I'm wholeheartedly in support of this. I really appreciate Councilmember Nicker, you bringing this forward. I think one of the top things that we can do as government officials to support a peaceful election is to use our platforms to emphasize the legitimacy of the process, fight back against harmful, just wrong, untruthful lies about voter fraud and voter illegitimacy. No one can take our rights away in this democracy. So thank you, and I'll be proudly supporting this today and sharing it because I think we need to hold both the uncertainty of this election at the same time that we're upholding the rights and processes that are in place to make sure it can happen in a very difficult time in a difficult election year. So thanks for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Ms. Jalali. Ms. Prince, then Mr. Tao, then Ms. Yang.
I too want to join Councilmember Jalali in thanking Ms. Naker for bringing this forward. You're right, there's never been a year before like this one. And I was listening to public radio the other day. Steve Simon was doing a call-in program with Kerry Miller, and of course, he's our Secretary of State. And if there's one thing we can feel good about as Minnesotans, it's that our Secretary of State has thought of everything. People were calling in with the most confusing, troublesome little questions, and he had answers for everyone. And in the most reassuring tone said, yes, we've received that question, and the answer is, and it was very reassuring to me. And then I also want to point out that council members Yang and Jalali and I met with the Mayor's Commission for people with disabilities. And I believe that was last Thursday evening. And we just had the discussion was about voting. They had questions about our process. And it was an hour of just the most stimulating conversation about the importance of voting and the importance of accessibility, obviously, to voting, which brings me to my last point, which is, again, to be very proud of Ramsey County elections and St. Paul's in all the improvements we've made by having early voting sites and all the information is so clear on the county website. And what I appreciate about that this year is this message that's going out that we should all have a plan for voting, because between now and the election, there are still a variety of ways that you can cast your vote. And thanks to our state and our city and county, we are very well prepared for this election that's coming up. So thank you for bringing this in under suspension. It is really important.
Thank you, Ms. Prince. We have Mr. Tao and Ms. Yang.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you, Councilmember Necker, for bringing this forward. Coming from a country where you couldn't vote, and if you wanted to vote, you had to be in a certain communist party. And being here, sometimes people, because it is our citizenship right, and we sometimes may take it for granted. But I'll tell you, the day that's taken away from you is the day that you'll feel that your voice, your value, your ideal has no place. And so please go and exercise your right. If you have a family, talk to your family, encourage your grandma, grandpa, your relatives, take your whole, in the Hmong community, take my whole clan or ask all my clan leaders to invite their families to go and vote. It's really important. And Ramsey County, the city has made it much easier. Now they have translator, they have people there to help you and to guide you and to translate things for you. And so if there's ever any question or concern that you have at the poll, let us know. As your elected representative, we will be a voice and we'll make sure that those obstacles are taken out of your ways. But please go and vote. Don't let this pass. This is an extremely important years, and so I look forward to everyone going out and exercising their constitutional right.
Thank you, Mr. Tao. Ms. Yang.
Thanks, Council President. Thanks, Councilmember Naker, for bringing this forward to the council. I'm very supportive of it, and while we're seeing other cities and states, like, for example, folks in New York City waiting 3 to 4 hours in line just to cast their vote, makes me super grateful. Where we live in a state in which we have leaders and organizers, community members who really value access to voting and making sure, and even working on campaigns to restore voting rights for people who were formerly incarcerated. And so I am super grateful for that. I wanted to uplift the early vote efforts. Just yesterday, we had 7 different sites in Ramsey County open up for people to vote early, and you can go right on the Ramsey County website for that info. And for folks who want to vote by mail, you can return your mail, make sure your ballot, make sure it's postmarked by November 3rd and receive no later than November 10th for it to count. You can also return it in person at the Ramsey County Elections Office as well, no later than November 3rd by 3 p.m. So happy voting, and hopefully, we get every single person in St. Paul out there casting their vote for those who are able to.
Wonderful. Thank you for that detailed information as well. I was reading this morning in many states, the postmaster, or the word is, don't mail them in anymore. Walk them into one of the early voting sites. I mean, obviously, Minnesota has a wonderful voting policies that are open and accessible to people, where other states are not as strong of advocates in preserving the voter rights. But if there's a possibility to get them into one of these mini drop sites, it's possibly advisable. Other comments before we vote? All right, seeing no further comments, Ms. Naker moves approval. Roll call.
Tao,
Aye.
Tolbert,
Yes.
Yang,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Naker,
Aye.
Prince,
Aye.
Council President Brenmoen.
Aye.
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted.
Thank you for bringing that. So it brings us to the end of our meeting. We've managed to finish in record time again tonight. So I will just look quickly to the hands and see if folks have news or updates from the ward beyond obviously the important messages we've shared today about probably the biggest event in the next week, which is of course voting. Ms. Prince.
Yes, thank you. This Saturday, October 31st, Halloween, Sunray Shopping Center, the Southeast Community Organization, Ramsey County 4-H are going to be hosting a spooktacular from 1 to 4 p.m. and there'll be treats for kids in costumes, activities, and opportunity for neighbors to meet socially distanced and masked, of course. A chance to support Sunray businesses, and there'll be a DJ. You do have to pre-register. So simply go to the southeastside.org website and register there, or on the Facebook page of the Southeast Community Organization. This event is especially significant this year, I think, not only because of COVID and the fear about doing normal Halloween things, but Sunray was the site of some of the civil unrest. And it's just great that the community has come together and will be able to celebrate this Saturday at that location. So we're really grateful to Sunray Shopping Center for their leadership on all of this when it's been a particularly difficult year.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Prince. Other news from wards or St. Paul or out and about and around? All right. Well, it seems that then we have come to the end of our meeting and reiterating the very important message that we all, if we haven't already, need to vote. Ms. Prince, did you have another announcement?
No.
Oh, okay. Didn't want to miss something. All right. So seeing no other comments, and there's no further item or agenda items to come before us. Thank you very much, folks. We are adjourned.